mynews.studio.
Today is February 5th, 2026. Imagine this. A farm that was nearly barren and struggling has now become home to one of the largest populations of purple emperor butterflies in the UK. How did that transformation happen, and what does it suggest for the future of farming?
That really is a dramatic change. Let's rewind a bit. Knepp Castle Estate in West Sussex, back in the early 2000s. At that point, it was conventional farming. The soil was depleted, wildlife was almost non-existent, and the business side wasn't working. The Burrells faced mounting losses and in 2001 made the decision to stop farming altogether. They let the land go wild. But what pushed them to make such a big shift?
It really came down to economics. The soil, mostly poor clay, just couldn't support intensive farming any longer. On top of that, subsidies were drying up, and the land itself was exhausted. They saw that continuing with intensive crops and livestock just wasn't sustainable, financially or environmentally, so they began to take down fences, reverse drainage, and brought in old breeds of free-roaming cattle, ponies, pigs, and deer. Did they think it would lead to such a big ecological turnaround?
From what the data shows, not at all. After 20 years, the numbers are striking. Breeding birds have increased by over 900% since 2007. Nightingales are up more than 500%. Turtle doves, which are in sharp decline across the country, up by 600%. Dragonflies and damselflies have jumped over 870%. And about those purple emperor butterflies, 283 counted in a single day, which is a record for Britain. But how do these numbers actually show up on the land itself?
The big factor was simply giving nature room to operate. The animals, pigs for example, rooted around in the soil, which allowed rare plants like scarlet pimpernel to grow, and that supported more turtle doves. Beavers, brought back after centuries, built dams that created wetlands, improved water quality, and helped manage flooding. These grazing and rooting animals kept the landscape changing: grassland, woodland, scrub. That constant change created a highly diverse habitat, which supported so many more species.
So, was it just about stepping back, or was there still a plan behind it?
It's mostly a hands-off approach, but there's still guidance. They decided which animals to introduce and where to restore water flows, but then let natural processes take over. Isabella Tree, who co-owns Knepp, called it putting nature back in the driving seat. That's a key difference from traditional conservation, which often tries to keep habitats fixed.
And what about the economics? The estate was struggling. But now Knepp employs 80 people, up from just 23 before. They earn income from ecotourism, meat from the free-roaming herds, a cafe, even rentals from converted barns. Isn't that a pretty strong example of how rural areas can regenerate?
Yes, and the effect isn't limited to Knepp. Their example has encouraged 43 neighboring farms to join a cluster, working together on land management and creating wildlife corridors. So the changes are spreading beyond just one estate. It's becoming regional.
The timing is significant. We're seeing biodiversity loss globally, climate pressures increasing. Is what's happening at Knepp something that can be adapted by other countries, even with very different landscapes or histories?
The main idea is letting natural processes shape the land, using grazing animals to create complex habitats, can be adapted elsewhere. Knepp shows that land which doesn't work well for intensive farming can become a major asset for both biodiversity and the economy. That's useful for anyone with land that's struggling to produce.
But scaling up, there must be barriers. Policy, funding, maybe even resistance from neighbors. How did Knepp handle those?
They worked closely with neighbors through the cluster approach, found ways to resolve conflicts, and focused on benefits everyone could share. But for this to spread globally, it needs more. Policies that last, new ways to finance nature recovery, like biodiversity credits or carbon markets. Charlie Burrell, who owns Knepp, estimates that reversing global biodiversity loss will require $700 billion a year. Governments can't shoulder that alone.
So, for people listening, what should they take away? Rewilding isn't just good for nature, but also for business. Is it catching on quickly enough to really change how we think about land?
The recovery of species at Knepp, nightingales, turtle doves, white storks, rare butterflies, shows this works. The economic turnaround is proof that rural areas can benefit. And with more farms joining in, there's momentum. The key question is whether enough landowners and policymakers will adopt these methods soon and on a large enough scale to have a global impact.
That really is the big question. Can Knepp's approach be repeated elsewhere and fast enough to meet the urgency of the climate and biodiversity crises?
The evidence points to yes, if the will and support are there. Knepp isn't just a one-off story. It challenges us to rethink how we use land everywhere.
From a struggling farm to a thriving center for wildlife, Knepp's story offers more than a local success. It could be a guide for global recovery. Thanks for tuning in. This episode was produced by mynews.studio. Try it now for free.